Sure. Look, I'd love to say that I know all the answers. I don't, and I wish I had a better answer for Canadians and those whose jobs are at risk. We're talking about 1 million jobs potentially that are at risk were full tariffs to be imposed. They shouldn't. They don't make sense, and we hope that logic will prevail. I don't want to say at the same time that the meetings in Washington are not useful, even though I come out of some of these meetings with some ambivalence, not knowing whether they've been useful or useless. I can't leave it up to chance and hope that nothing will happen. I go to Washington. Minister McGuinty has gone, Minister Joly has gone, Minister LeBlanc has gone, pleading our case to make sure that the Americans continue to know that we are their closest ally, and let's not make a liability out of an asset, which is our relationship and the security and safety of our northern border. But often there's a demystification process with our U.S. counterparts, whose minds aren't always or very seldom turned to the northern border. They're frankly more focused on Mexico. It doesn't mean we don't have our challenges, but the reality is that the northern border, our southern border, is one that is an asset. It's not a liability, so let's not turn it into it. It doesn't mean that we can't work better, harder, and stronger to make that border less permeable. But on the balance of things, the U.S. needs to know that they are sending guns, they are sending drugs here, and when it comes to asylum seekers, most of them come from that side of the border and not ours. So there's a bit of a demystification process that we've been undertaking. We need to continue to do that. But at the end of the day, for an administration that uses uncertainty as a marketing or a bargaining tool, that's precisely what's happening. So I wish I could say more, but I'll probably find out at the same time as all Canadians.
Minister Miller, this is Harry North for the Montreal Gazette. Amid today's announcement and the threat of tariffs coming in, how will innovation and technology businesses like these ones be impacted, and will the Canadian government push for other markets such as Europe in the future?
Thanks, Harry, for that question. There's no question, no matter what we do, if tariffs come into place, it is going to be painful for the Canadian economy. 1 million jobs at risk is no joke. It's something that we have to take seriously. 75 to 80% of our commercial transactions are done with the United States. That's not something you can fix overnight. Guy rightly mentioned the elimination of interprovincial barriers. They are sometimes very technical regulations. They are sometimes regulations in and around the sale of alcohol. Some provinces get quite guarded about deregulating those aspects. Some of them are very important sometimes when it comes to preserving the French language. And qualifications. So it's not something that can be just gotten rid of overnight, but that can liberate billions billions in trade if we were to eliminate them, and Minister Nand is working on that. But it isn't the end of this. It isn't the totality of the story. We have more free trade agreements with our G7 partners than any other country. That's important, and it will continue to be important to diversify our economies. But we can't replace an economy that is responsible for 80% of our trade overnight, and it's going to hurt. My message to Canadians is that we have a higher pain threshold than our partners to the south of us. We can continue to fight. We will have to bring the fight, and it will hurt Americans as well. Not to mention, and it's important to reiterate, that 35 of those states, their primary trading partner is Canada, so it will hurt them. And we hope that logic will prevail.
And just on a different note, can you comment on the announced end of temporary protected status of families from Haiti in the United States, and potentially more families from Haiti coming to Quebec and Canada seeking asylum?
I can at this time. I understand it'll go into effect potentially on August 3rd. What we continue to say to the Americans is, if they want to have a managed flow of asylum seekers, let's work within the parameters of the Safe Third Country Agreement that has allowed us to manage our northern border, our southern border and their northern border in an effective and a fluid fashion. That means that irregular migrants that come in to Canada without being authorized will be returned to the U.S. and vice versa. If people come from Canada into the U.S., they will be returned according to the parameters of the Safe Third Country Agreement. Any plans that the U.S.'s migration policy shouldn't be Canada's problem, and the same goes with them. Our challenges with migration shouldn't be their problems, and that is my focus as an immigration minister, although at the same time it would be naive to think that policies don't affect one another with the border that we have, and that's something where we need to be sitting down at the table with them. In my productive conversation, although I don't know what they've yielded yet, with Secretary Kristi Noem or Secretary Tom Homan, emphasize that. But this is a 4-year process, and we'll have to see and be prepared for any eventuality, because we know the rhetoric that was used towards immigrants in the U.S. during the election.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
It's not something that I think would be right to reproduce in Canada, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't occur in the next election in Canada.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Dan Spector from Global News. Has the Canadian government received any indication from the Americans that the tariffs are indeed going into effect?
Nope.
And just please
Look at the cameras. No, not yet.
There's been no word like today, no?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Would the Canadian government be willing to put tariffs, additional tariffs on Chinese goods to avoid the U.S. tariffs?
It wouldn't be a decision that we would discuss publicly. It would have to work for Canada.